Well, greetings yet again from guess where? Am I going to be coy or am I going to be naughty? Am I going to suggest that I am still at the wonderful King Edward VII Hospital? Or am I going to pretend that I'm back at Castle Goring? Because sadly, I'm not yet at any rate. So, we have a bit of ground to cover today, and some of it to me is important, and some of it is really important, and should be to everybody, even those who don't find it important. And so hopefully you're all going to be somewhat interested in not only the trivia, but the rather more important matters upon which we will touch. And so without further ado, I am going to plunge in with what Wendy Smith says. You appear to be making some progress, and I'm so glad. Please know that those of us who care about you are praying for your recovery. Wendy Smith, thank you very much for that. You are one of many people who have written in and sent in cards and contacted the hospital and given me your salutations and your warm best wishes one way or the other. And I cannot thank all of you enough. I'm afraid there's no prospect of anybody getting a personal acknowledgement. I don't have the strength. Sorry. I don't even have the strength to instruct anybody to act on my behalf. As I said, what you see in this situation is me at optimal capacity. And believe me, I don't run on full all the time. But I thought it was very important to acknowledge the flowers have been sent, the presents have been sent, the cards have been sent, the well wishes have been sent. They mean a very great deal to me. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Frasier Warrior says, Lady C, wishing you all the best with your recovery, and I hope it is a speedy one. Well, it's not going to be, sadly. It's 6 months before I can walk, basically, much less properly. However, we complain as little as possible and truck along as much as possible. I wondered if you had any insight on what is being called Harry and Meghan's Project Thor. Do you think they really have put or are putting any thought into getting back in with the royal family? And what do you think their chances of success are? Thank you for keeping us all up to date with your insights at this most difficult time personally. You are an inspiration to us all. Thank you very much for that. I think Harry and Meghan's Project Thor was as genuine as all of the barracuda teeth in Meghan Markle's mouth, as authentic as the ski jump nose that she has on her very distorted face. And she wasn't born with that nose. It's bad plastic surgery. It's overambitious plastic surgery. Michael Jackson had similar issues. You know, if you take out too much of the African heritage, it does mean there is a cavity, and the cavity is rather inclined to be like a sinkhole in a road. All of a sudden, kapow! I'm sure nasal treatments haven't helped either. The whole thing, in my view, has been a massive con to embarrass the royal family, to put Harry and Meghan in the position of being victims of a cruel and vicious royal family, while they were claiming that they wanted Thor, that they wanted reconciliation, that they wanted something positive. They were, and I've said it before, they were setting the royal family up for a massive fail. I don't think it's worked, because I think that people are now sufficiently astute to and aware of Meghan and Harry's machinations and her constant scheming to know that this does not have the ring of truth. If they had wanted reconciliation, Harry would not have left Clarence's house with a face like thunder, immediately got onto the Guardian newspaper, which is a pro-Republican rag. It used to be a very respectable and reputable newspaper called the Manchester Guardian. It's pseudo left-wing respectable now, but it's certainly a publication of no significance or eminence any longer. But it is a rabidly Republican left-wing. And he knew that by giving an interview to them, saying that he regretted nothing that he had said or done, that there was no way that that was not going to be interpreted by anybody with 2 ears, 2 eyes, and a brain in their head as an act of anything but hostility. Harry and Meghan, I've said it before and I'll reiterate, are fighting for their lives in many ways, shapes, and forms. They have been fighting for their commercial life ever since they slipped between the sheets together, and she decided that she would be able to milk the situation for all it was worth financially. And this was before they were even married. They have done everything they could possibly do to make themselves into victims of people who offered them hearth, home, hospitality, and welcome. They have systematically lied about every gift, twisting it into being something poisonous, and inventing poisons where none could possibly exist according to any rational individual. They have also used his royal status not only to make money for themselves, but to injure the royal family while making money for themselves. Harry has exploited his position in the most flagrant way, using his royal status to pose as a victim and to try to effectively milk from newspapers funds to which he was not in any reasonable person's mind justified in possessing. The latest thing is the upcoming, in January of next year, £38 million lawsuit that he and David Sherborne and the other claimants mounted to try to not only milk associated newspapers of as much money as they could get out of associated newspapers, but to do so with fabricated evidence. And yet again, I have referred to this in the past, and yet again, the issue of Gavin Burrows' statement, which was the linchpin upon which the claims were made by Doreen Lawrence, that's Baroness Lawrence, who owes a great debt to associated newspapers, because that's the newspaper company that achieved justice for her son after he was so brutally done away with by racist thugs in this country. And I have said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I know people who know Doreen Lawrence, and it is absolutely horrifying to anybody concerned that Doreen Lawrence could have allowed herself to be talked in to suing the very newspaper company which she owes such a debt of gratitude to, on a trumped up series of charges by Gavin Burrows. Gavin Burrows was a private investigator who, according to the claimants, made a voluntary statement to the effect that he had been commissioned by associated newspapers to break the law and garner evidence that was untrue and unfair or unjustly acquired. This has been going on for some time now. Well, he's issued a new statement. It's a 30-page witness statement. And according to Gavin Burrows, he's a former private detective. He says that he does not recognize the purported witness statement issued in his name. He states, "I believe that my signature on that document is a forgery." He says that its various claims are completely false, complete rubbish, and a complete fantasy. In the statement dated the 25th of September of this year, Mr. Burrows states how Graham Johnson, a convicted phone hacker, effectively pounded him and wouldn't leave him alone. According to him, Johnson claimed that he was working on phone hacking claims against newspapers and wanted some help with his research. He introduced him to a paralegal colleague called Dan Waddell, who paid Mr. Burrows £600 every time he advised them. On one occasion, according to Mr. Burrows, Johnson offered to pay him £3,000 to write a statement, then later insisted it was just a joke, and along the lines of Meghan Markle saying that she hadn't remembered that she had been assisting amid scabies with his book, Funding Freedom and Finding Freebies. Burrows says, I remember they asked me on more than one occasion whether I had done any work for the Daily Mail. They told me that the Daily Mail was a major target. I told them repeatedly that I had not worked for the Mail. According to Mr. Burrows, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Waddell said, and this is a quote, newspapers did not want the publicity or cost of a court case, so would pay out to settle claims, which Mr. Waddell described as a perfect scam and a gravy train. According to this statement, Mr. Johnson also spoke a lot about Max Mosley. Now, Max Mosley was the son of Sir Oswald Mosley, who was caught in a very compromising position with professional ladies of the night and Nazi uniforms, and was exposed, and thereafter funded at vast expense to himself litigation to try to bring down the publications that he held responsible for his exposure. The fact that they were only exposing what had happened meant that he, of course, had no responsibility whatsoever for his actions. And he evidently said that there was plenty of money in the pool, and there was always enough money for the right witness. I don't know what that sounds like to you, but it sounds to me as if they are suborning a perjury. Johnson introduced Gavin Burrows to Anjali Sangani, a solicitor who certified his disputed witness statement and whom he says he has only met twice. Sanjani was instructed by Doreen Lawrence, Sir Elton John, his husband David Furnish, and Liz Hurley in the Associated Newspapers claim. And although she is no longer a part of the legal team, she visited Mr. Burrows' house in early 2021, and according to him, she brought hundreds of pounds worth of flowers and a £200 bottle of whiskey. She allegedly told him to deal only with Mr. Johnson, who would pay him cash and promised a regular monthly retainer. You're not allowed in the British system, whether it is Scottish or English in Wales. You're not allowed to pay witnesses. You're just not allowed to. It's called suborning perjury. According to Mr. Burrows in the statement, I would get £5,000 a month for working a couple of days a week. And if I had any cash expenses, I only had to ask Mr. Johnson. She said that they were going after all the newspapers. She said that after the News of the World, the main paper they were going after was the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, because they had the most money. She asked me if I had done any work for the Mail or the Mail on Sunday. I said no, I had not, but I had met with journalist Paul Henderson a couple of times. Well, Paul Henderson has denied ever commissioning Mr. Burrows. According to Mr. Burrows, a few weeks after that meeting, he was summoned to a meeting with Miss Sanjani and Mr. Johnson, where they were joined by David Sherborne, the claimant's barrister. Now, you might remember that Harry, in his book Spare, went to some great lengths, if I am not mistaken. He might have done it elsewhere, but I seem to recall it was in Spare, to make the case that he and Meghan were staying with Elton John and David Furnish in the south of France, and that they are the ones who introduced him to David Sherborne, who pointed out to him that he had cases against associated newspapers, since when he has been going hell for leather to shut down associated newspapers. And if he doesn't succeed in shutting them down totally, he will divest them of as much of their wealth as he can, as long as it ends up in his wife's and David Sherborne's pockets. According to Burrows' statement, Sherborne asked him about his investigative techniques and how much he charged for surveillance before departing. I won't go into the rest of the ins and outs. I think I've made the position sufficiently clear that Gavin Burrows is absolutely clear about the fact that he never gave a witness statement to the effect that they have posted. Sherborne and the claimant's other legal representatives have made it clear to the court that they do not intend to call Mr. Burrows as a witness because he has withdrawn his cooperation. Instead, they intend to rely on hearsay evidence in relation to his claims. So he's saying, I never made this statement. They're saying, oh, we don't need to call him. He can deny that he made the statement. We're going to get everybody else who says that he made the statement to say that he made the statement that he claims he didn't make. I don't know about you, but I'm smelling a rat. Well, Anthony White Casey's, no longer QC's, Casey's, he's a KC for Associated, has applied to cross-examine Gavin Burrows. He told the court yesterday that he wants to ask him if he had recanted or disavowed his first statement. This whole new witness statement palaver has been made public after an application to the judge. It was lodged with the court as an exhibit to a statement by a solicitor instructed by Associated seeking permission to cross-examine Mr. Burrows. Mr. Sherborne, who seems to be swimming in very fishy waters, did not oppose the release, but asked for reporting to reflect his view, and I'm quoting, about the scurrilous nature of its contents. According to him, it is a grotesque inclusion which is meant to be an attack on parts of the legal team, which simply shouldn't be permitted. In other words, Associated Newspapers and Gavin Burrows don't have a right, according to Sherborne, to say that what he claims is a fabrication was fabricated. And if he persists in saying it, it's scurrilous. And how dare anybody for a second doubt the veracity of the Sherborne team? None of this could you make up. We are living in truly extraordinary times where the courts are being flagrantly misused and abused, where rich and greedy individuals are misusing their wealth and or their power and or their knowledge of the legal process to not only undermine organs that protect us as a democracy, namely a free press, but where any aspersion cast upon their bona fides should be scorned because they are above suspicion. Let's see how this all pans out. Because they thought that they were going to be able to blackmail Associated Newspapers into buckling, and they haven't been able to do so yet. I am not a fortune teller. As everybody knows, I go out of my way to not make predictions. But I think it would be very, very naive of me to think that if this matter goes to court, and if it is found that Gavin Burrows did not give that witness statement, and that it was fabricated by Prince Harry's side, that an awful lot of heads are going to roll. Oh, Mr. Sherborne, I do hope that you're not going to find yourself in too much hot water I might need you to defend me against somebody who unjustly attacks me. And you are a brilliant advocate. And just imagine, with me, you won't even need to be inventive. You'll simply need to just speak the truth. Let's leave it at that for the moment. Barbara Luce says, God bless you. May he guide your recovery. Thank you. So grateful you are keeping your spirits high. The British press was awful to you. Yes, it was. I remember a few decades ago all the vile things written after your divorce. But you are the ultimate survivor, looking lovely as usual, sounding totally coherent too. Prayers continue. Thank you, Barbara Luce. And yes, Associated Newspapers was one of those vile publications. And note whose side I'm taking in all of this. I condemn Associated Newspapers when I find its behaviour lacking as a result of its conduct. I also condemn behaviour that seems to put Associated Newspapers in a frame where it does not belong. I am finding it very difficult to envisage a scenario in which David Sherborne and Ms. Sanjani and all of the other cabal will crawl under the woodwork and scurry into the field like rats while somebody ends up with egg on their face. Let's see how this one pans out. Katie Forrestal says, hello, dear indomitable Lady C. You are highlighting some major concerns regarding the NHS. I truly appreciate your efforts. I am sorry for your suffering. Thank you for that. Yes, I have been absolutely horrified by what has happened with me and my treatment and the way I was being forced down the Liverpool Pathway quite unnecessarily, except to save the NHS a few pounds. There is so much rotten at the moment, not only in the NHS, but in governance in this country. We are really at crunch time. And anybody who thinks we're not is living in a world that does not exist. Now, it's not only the NHS that is causing problems at the moment. Let me make that point. Because there's also the BBC. Annie 1926 says, the BBC manipulated the footage at Orgreave during the miners' strike to show miners attacking the police, while it was the police attacking the miners. They have been changing film for decades. Well, I don't know how many of you are aware of what has been happening in the last day or two, but there has been an explosion since the Michael Prescott's comments were made public via the Telegraph, and I, in my own limited little way, helped to spread them a little bit further and wider, and it seems to have had a positive effect. And there is now a huge issue. We have had Mr. Samir Shah, the Director General, trying to make out that's of the BBC, trying to make out that things are really being exaggerated. We have had the various organs within the BBC trying to make out that this is a right-wing coup. It's a right-wing coup because the BBC has been found to have falsified information, not only about President Trump, but about the trans issues, about reportage in the Middle East, amongst many other things. And if you do not go along with the fact that the BBC is a benevolent organisation that simply wants what's best for everybody and knows what's best for everybody, and those of us who don't disagree with it and its perpetual conclusions have something wrong with us, because we can't have a justified opinion. No, we are too ignorant, we are too uninformed, we aren't sophisticated enough, we aren't decent enough, we aren't enlightened enough. Well, even Emily Maitlis has admitted that it was absolutely terrifying that the Newsnight team was involved with working on an investigation into the Tavistock gender clinic. And what was terrifying? It wasn't that they were interfering with the natural development in certain cases. No, it was that the internal LGBT mafia was allowed to continue censoring coverage on the issue. This has been going on for years. You know, the ignorance to which the BBC is subject is beyond belief. And their license fee expires in 2027. My own feeling is it should not be renewed in its present form. The BBC, if it is going to be the state news organisation, is going to have to start to be impartial. It cannot be as radical and radicalized partial as it has been to date. I mean, you know, for instance, they refused to allow J.K. Rowling to appear on because she was a bigot. One doesn't have to agree with J.K. Rowling to say that was she a bigot or did she have an opinion that disagreed with theirs. And what the BBC has done has radicalized issues and created greater division than would otherwise have existed had there been the possibility of more considered debate, with each side being given the opportunity to air its views, and each side being allowed to air its views without being crushed under the might of the BBC and its radical left-wing ideas. The idea that the BBC is already starting to spin what has happened to it as it's somehow the victim of a right-wing conspiracy. There have been many conspiracies, but it has usually been the perpetrator. Now, you could say that the BBC was embarked on a right-wing conspiracy when it brought down the Shah of Iran, because you could say that the Shah of Iran, who was a secular leader and believed in a semblance of representative government, was to the right of the Ayatollahs, who are theocrats. So you could say that actually the BBC was supporting the left wing, or you could say actually the BBC was supporting the more radical right wing, which was the imams and the theocrats. Do you see? It's not as straightforward as the BBC would like us to believe it is. Personally, I think that they have had an extremely naive, very privileged, very misguided view of what often world politics. I mean, the BBC, I have to tell you, assisted very greatly in the destruction of Jamaica's economy in the 1970s. It assisted Michael Manley in destroying the country's economy and in running out most white people, most nearly white people, and most people who were centrist. Not all, but most. The BBC played a huge part in propping up Michael Manley as he embarked upon his communistic rhetoric. He called himself a democratic socialist. But then let's remember, the Soviet Union was both democratic and socialist as well. An awful lot is going on at the moment, and let us see how it all pans out. Because I have to tell you, Meghan and Harry, they are incidental to what is going on at the moment. I suspect they might find that they get caught up in the tail end of things. They need to be very careful when you're swimming on the back of a boat and the engines are on, propellers can really be very, very dangerous. Not that I'm suggesting that anything untoward beyond in a metaphoric sense will happen to them. But Harry and Meghan have played some very nasty games. And Harry and Meghan have shown us that they are as adept at playing a vicious, nasty political games as other left-wingers are. It's an interesting irony of life that the right usually is a lot less vicious, nasty, punitive, and pejorative than the left. Look at what's just happened in France. They've had to release President Sarkozy from prison. Why is President Sarkozy in prison in the first place? He's in prison because the judges chose to believe not that he got any money from Colonel Gaddafi. And let's remember, I know a little bit about Colonel Gaddafi. I was the Libyan ambassador's private secretary in London in 1977. I used to speak to Colonel Jalloud practically every day of my life, and I used to speak to Colonel Gaddafi occasionally, but I certainly spoke to him. And the French authorities have shown a highly selective acceptance of fact, what they would accept and what they wouldn't. And they accepted as their belief something that cannot be proven to be a fact, so that they could imprison President Sarkozy. Do we really want to live in a world where political division causes people who represent and support one party or another to end up in prison? Is this what a civilized society is about? Is this what democracy is about? I thought democracy was about, I like this party's policies, I vote for it. When I don't like that party's policies, I vote for another party. Nobody goes to prison unless they flagrantly break the law, which they usually don't. And if they do, I mean, we've got plenty of evidence recently that when the law is broken flagrantly, nothing happens. Sorry, unless you're on the wrong side of the political divide. But I would like to see some dignity brought back into politics, and a measure of moderation and of tolerance, where different political aims can be striven for, and when the electorate says, we don't want to head down that direction any longer, the politicians don't decide that they know more than the electorate. They're going to sabotage the electorate, which is precisely what has happened in this country with Brexit, etc. And that they are then going to take the law into their own hands and use the law against their political opponents. We need responsible governance, and without it, I am afraid we are all damned to dictatorship. That's a fact. And on that note, I'm going to say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has not been too heavy for you. All of this is very important. All of this affects our lives on a daily basis, and it's going to continue to do so for a while. We need to find our voices, and we do not have to agree with the aims of other political parties, but as long as they are elected and as long as they are not being flagrantly abusive, I am afraid it is a bad policy for the incoming party to prosecute the outgoing one. I hope this has been of interest to you. Please keep the questions and comments coming in so I'll know what you'd like us to be speaking about. Thank you so much. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and take good care. Bye-bye.